Hello ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paul TX141 Walsh and welcome to some more Gran Turismo Sport, a racing game developed by Polyphony Digital and published by Sony Interactive Entertainment for the PlayStation 4. Focusing on the game's online mode and on sport mode, in this episode I take a look at my performance in the fourth race of the 2019 Manufacturer Series pre-season, which was held at the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit. This is a race in the Group 4 category, with my vehicle being the BMW M4. With that, let's get racing. So, taking a look at the grid, you'll see that I qualified third. My story for qualifying, I was happy with my lap at 1:33.0. Just over a second down first and second, the Volkswagen and Lexus here qualifying with 1:31.9s, trading laps throughout the session. Well done to them. They clearly had a much greater comfort in the track compared to myself. And that was really the story of this race weekend for me. I do not feel comfortable with my local race circuit. Brands Hatch is a circuit only 20 miles or so from where I live. And when I say comfort, I mean I did not feel happy with running my car at 100% all the way around the track, non-stop for multiple laps, where I'd been qualifying alternatively over the race distance of 11 laps. And that meant I had a very high chance over the course of qualifying or the race of binning the car, putting one wheel onto the grass, and that would be enough to send me flying off into a gravel trap, which there were numerous gravel traps on this track, or into a wall, and that would just take me out of it completely. So I had to rethink my mental approach for this race, which was rather than run the car at 100% all the time, run it at say 90 to 95%, be consistent in the lap times where possible, particularly over the race, and then just aim to finish within the top 10. And qualifying third, I thought I had a very good chance of staying within the top 10 and picking up some good points in this all-D driver rating lobby. In terms of my race strategy then, I'd be doing an initial 6 lap stint out of the 11 laps for my first stint, aiming to get to the end of that 6th lap for a bit of fuel saving, so you're going to see some short shifts and some lifting and coasting, something I wasn't used to until this race. And in my final stint, the 5 laps, will see me push a little bit harder perhaps because I can use all the fuel in the car. I'll be running the entirety of the race on the harder of the 2 tyre compounds available, the racing hard, the other being the racing medium. Couldn't really get the racing medium to work over longer distances here. That's something I can work on because I saw quite a few people do this race on the racing medium. Coming to the end of the grid then, car number 19, I should also point out that when I did my race simulation runs, not a single one did I manage to make it to the end of 11 laps without throwing the car off the track at some point. So this was an adventure into the unknown, and it'd be a lesson in consistency for me in terms of bringing the car home with a good position. But with that, as we start with the rolling start, as always it would seem for this series of races, what you'll see in this opening lap as we get underway is I'm going to try and hang on to the back of the Lexus in front for a good chunk of this first lap and use the slipstream in order to pull me along a little bit, particularly on the straights, and that way help save some fuel. So we come down to turn 1 then, no major incidents here for the first corner, and now going up the hill into turn 2 Druids. The guys behind, the Hyundai in 4th place and then the Subaru in 5th place, keep an eye on them. You're going to see a little bit of action between them on this first lap, but for now we're just keeping an eye on the guys in front and trying to maintain that distance. Get a bit early on the power there coming out of turn 2, which causes me to go sideways and lose a little bit of pace on the guys in front, and this causes me to start falling outside of that 1 second window to the Lexus in front of me, which means I'm already compromised in terms of my slipstreaming strategy. Gaining a little bit here as we come through turn number 4, Surtees corner, and now going up onto the straight here and heading towards Pilgrim's Drop up into turn 5, which is Hawthorns. Looking behind right now, we can see that having lost the time on the Lexus, now they're over at 1.2 seconds away. The Hyundai behind is looking to potentially make a move going into turn 5. They take a little peek into the inside line, but I've got that covered off, and that causes them to go wide. They've carried a bit too much speed into the corner, and the Subaru in 5th place comes charging up the inside coming out to turn 5 and picks up 4th place off of them. So now we've got to think about that Subaru coming up behind. And really, at this point I was starting to think to myself, well, what do I do if I do have someone come charging up behind and really goes for an overtaking manoeuvre? Do I try to defend it, or alternatively do I just let them go? And I thought, well, seeing as we're not 100% comfortable with the track, despite all the practice we put in, why try to make life uncomfortable for myself by fighting someone who clearly knows the track better and has the greater pace at a given point in time? So what I thought is I'll put up a very small fight if there's the appropriate space to do so. Otherwise, I'm just going to let them through, and as the car goes past, I'm going to try and get them in their slipstream by that 1 second window behind their car and use that to pull me along, particularly on the straights, much like the second place at the start of this race. Now coming on to lap 2 here, going through turn number 1 once again, and looking at the fuel gauge in terms of laps remaining, you can see I'm already starting to achieve that objective of having enough fuel to get me to the end of the 6th lap for this longer first stint, because it was the optimum strategy based on the experience that I had in practice and from some other videos of other YouTubers that I looked at in the past. Now coming through turn 3 and heading towards turn 4 on the Cooper straight here, we can see that Subaru is really close behind and they're gaining and gaining. So it's not going to be long most likely before they get past us. And I get the feeling they're probably going to do it up into turn 5 if not into turn 6, where you can brake much later if you feel more confident on your car's brakes. And I was expecting here that the Subaru would go charging past, but they give me a little bump in the back just to help propel me forward, trying to move us both a little bit closer to second place. Perhaps they're not feeling comfortable in trying to take me into turn 5. So you can see here, we're coming through turn 5 together. That Subaru is much faster behind. I stay over to the left as we go into turn 6 here, and I decide, right, brake a little bit earlier than perhaps I could, and just let the Subaru pass, get in behind them, and let's go together as we charge towards second place. And I'm using this for my own benefit, and they're probably using it so they can now be unleashed in the hunt for a higher position on the podium. Looking in the rearview mirror, we've still got that Hyundai behind, and we've also got somebody else coming up behind them. And looking at the race map in the top right corner of our screen, we can see that the field down to say 10th place is very tightly packed right now, albeit first and second are gradually pulling away from the rest of the field. And then we've got some back markers who are falling further and further back. It looks as though our grid of 19 has gone down to 18, somebody's pulled out already. So now carrying through to the end of the second lap then, and going on to lap number 3, there wasn't really much else to happen over the course of this first stint, if I'm honest with you, and this is going to appear quite a boring race because this was one more about management for me than actual racing. And sometimes I thought to myself over the course of this, you know, sometimes it is going to be a case of you're not going to be racing for the win, you're not going to be racing for the podium, you're just going to be racing for a good points finish. And that happens in a lot of racing sports in real life as well. You'll see some drivers just do not feel comfortable with the track or with the car on the day, and what they decide to do is, rather than end up going racing for the win or major points, they decide just to bring the car home in a decent position to pick up good points for the team. So I thought here I could bring good points home for BMW and just be happy with the fact I finished the race. So that mindset in mind, you can see I'm already dropping off of third place at this point. The Subaru is gradually creeping away from me. I've been putting in some purple and blue sectors, so I am feeling comfortable with the car, and this change in mentality has led to that comfort. I'm no longer feeling the pressure that I've got to be constantly pushing the car as hard as possible whilst fuel saving and worrying about that as well. Instead, by running at 95%, as I get a little sideways out of turn 6 here, I can just enjoy the car for what it is, enjoy the track for what it is, and it's a pleasure to be racing around Brands Hatch. Looking in the rearview mirror, we can see that the two guys behind him, 5th and 6th, are fighting one another, and that's causing them to fall just a little bit behind in terms of not being in my slipstream at the moment. They're 1.2 seconds heading towards 1.6 seconds now away from me. Looks as though they're really fighting hard as we come down into the final corner, turn 9, Clark's Curve, to finish off lap number 3. I get a little bit wide here, but it's not too compromising. It caused me to lose a little bit of speed, but nothing major. And as we come across the line, you'll see that I've now got 3.0 laps remaining on the gauge. This is perfect. Might do a little bit more short shifting every so often, just to make sure that number's just slightly above the 0.0, but I'm not too worried now about the fuel saving. We've achieved our objective. And as you're looking over on the right hand side of your screen at the lap times, keep an eye on those, because one thing I was very proud of at the end of this race is how consistent my lap times were. Laps 2 and 3 were already 134s, 134.6 on lap 2, 134.9 on lap 3. We could say that loss of 0.3 of a second was due to us backing off to let the Subaru through and going a little bit sideways in one of the corners if I remember correctly, but nothing major there, and that consistency will be shining through hopefully as we set a purple sector for sector 2, and we now carry through once again towards Pilgrim's Drop and then up towards Hawthorne's Corner, turn number 5. So as we charge along at this point, just looking behind, it looks as though the guys behind have finished fighting one another, and in fact the Hyundai has fallen back and we've got somebody else now coming up behind it in 5th place. They're just a second behind at the moment, but they are gaining over time, and it's worth noting that a lot of drivers felt more comfortable than myself around the track. It's to be expected, and I'm sure even the best drivers of GT Sport and all racing games and in racing in real life have certain tracks where they just do not feel as happy as they do on others, and so therefore they're just not going to have that natural pace or that natural comfort as they race around the track compared to the best drivers of the track. Still getting those blue sectors there, so improving on my lap times as the fuel's coming down and I'm setting into that rhythm. And looking at my tyre weight in the bottom left hand corner, Tyre wear's looking good. This was an improvement compared to my simulation runs at this point, the ones that I hadn't already thrown off into a ditch or into the gravel trap or into the wall, in that my racing hard tyres were doing very well. The car was not feeling difficult to drive at this point as we went into lap 5, and this meant that I could actually just enjoy the track even as tyre wear was starting to burn into the car. It wasn't a case that it was extreme tyre wear, and I felt these tyres could probably go all the way up to say lap 7 or 8 if fuel was not an issue, and I'd still be able to drive the car comfortably around, something I hadn't experienced up to this point. So this race as a result is also acting as a bit of a tutorial for me in terms of, okay, can we manage those tyres a little bit better, not be as heavy on the steering, not be as heavy in terms of fuel consumption, and just practice for future races, pardon me, in terms of getting used to the concept of that fuel saving in terms of tyre wear. And therefore when we go into those additional races whereby there's a softer tyre available that everybody's using, I'm still using a harder tyre, perhaps I can one day switch to those softer tyres and bring the car home at a comfortable race pace. Because as we saw in the previous video, a good number of people were running around on the softer tyre whereas I was using the harder tyre and still maintaining their race pace compared to myself. We're getting a little bit on third place at this point, it looks like, and in terms of fifth place behind, they are casually catching up towards us. I'm thinking to myself, they may be going for an overtake very shortly. If not, they'll try to get me in the pit. Perhaps they'll be better at fuel saving as well. They're not pushing too hard. I think they're also using the slipstream behind me in order to pull them along for the rest of the opening stint. I thought some drivers would be going in at the end of this lap, but it looks as though everybody agreed that the 6-lap stint to start off with was the optimum strategy, as the Subaru doesn't pull in, I believe it's the Porsche behind doesn't pull in, and we're all charging around for our 6th lap. And you see, in terms of fuel remaining, I've got 1.0 laps remaining just after crossing the line. I've got this fuel saving down to a perfect notch, and this means we'll be able to finish off this stint. And I'm gaining on the Subaru a little bit. They've just been gradually backing off by the looks of things. They haven't made any noticeable mistakes, so perhaps they're using this final lap as their fuel saving lap. It's not my intention to fight them because I don't want to suddenly compromise all the fuel saving I've done. I just want to hang in there and I can use their slipstream to pull me along as the guy behind's doing to my car. Another purple sector there, despite my tyres being quite heavily worn at this point, and I was happy with seeing this. Purple sectors, despite the fact my tyres have seen quite a bit of wear, means that I'm very happy in the car and that this race is going well. So coming out of turn 4 here, get a tiny bit wide but doesn't compromise me too much, don't end up putting a tyre on the gravel. We're charging down towards turn number 5 now at this point, going down Pilgrim's Drop into Hawthorne Hill and Hawthorne's Corner. We can see that the guy behind is getting closer and closer as we go on the brakes a little bit earlier just to manage going around the corner here, because what I found is when you start to get considerable tyre wear, there's a very high chance going through turn 5 you could end up drifting out wide off the track, compromising a lot of time and your position and speed going into turn number 6. That Porsche's backed off a little bit there, perhaps in reaction to me going on the brakes a little bit earlier into turn 5. Hasn't compromised them too much by the looks of things, and perhaps they're coming to the end of their tyre life as well. And now coming through turn number 8, we're falling back a little bit off of the Subaru as they're getting ready to go into the pits, I expect, and everybody is going to be charging into the pits at this point, as we'll see in the top left corner of our screen. And notice the fuel figures, and this is something which shocked me as I went into the pits. The guys in front and around me had a lot more fuel remaining compared to my own car. I've got approximately 4%. These guys have all got fuel within the 20s to 40s. And what I've realised is I need to do a lot of work on fuel saving. And 5th place, great job on them running the medium tyre this far compared to the rest of us running the hard tyre. And I'm going to have to look into fuel saving strategies, how essentially you manage to save that fuel, because I lose a lot of time here refueling the car in the pits to get to me to the end. And that's how the Porsche who was in 5th does leapfrog me into 4th place through the fact they didn't have to spend as much time in their pit box refueling the car. So at first I thought to myself, oh great, now I've really got to get this place back. I really wanted 4th back. But then again I thought to myself, well no, because if you go charging after this guy, and you'll see I don't realise this at first as I do push the car quite hard, I do make some silly mistakes on this opening lap number 7. But as I start to calm myself down, I think remember your opening strategy, going sideways there coming out of turn 3. You wanted to get to the end of this race. You didn't want to finish very high up on the grid, hopefully within the top 10, that was the target. As we go wide here into turn number 4, that's where I'm getting too adventurous with the car and I'm starting to compromise my consistency. So I've lost quite a bit of time on the Porsche already, and that means if they were starting to make any mistakes at a point, I'm now quite a distance away and probably can't capitalise on those mistakes, throwing that away. Let's just get the car to the end of the race, rather than having to try and hunt down the guy who clearly feels more comfortable with the track and more comfortable with their car with respect to the track. So you can see here I'm just going to start managing that gap between myself and the chap in front, whereby 6th place is 4 seconds down the road at the moment. The guy in front's 2.5 seconds, and they'll gradually start eking away, I suspect, as time goes on. And now we can run the car at its maximum in terms of fuel usage here. We don't have to worry about fuel saving anymore. You're going to see me doing some lifting and coasting through some of the corners still, because I felt quite comfortable, particularly with regards to turn 8, and just lifting off the throttle after a little bit of braking and going through the corner. And also turn 9 here, I felt that sometimes it was just easier to go around these corners by lifting off the accelerator and then coming back on the power after a time, rather than braking hard and getting straight on the accelerator. Those corners really came to me just by taking it gently. Gained a little bit of time on the Porsche in front, now 2 seconds rather than 2.5 seconds. Went into second gear here by accident, going through turn 1. I should have been in third gear, and that does cost me a little bit of speed going up the hill into Druids, turn 2. But looking over towards the right of our screen again, looking at those lap times, that whole first stint, note that in terms of laps 2 through to 5, they were all 1:34s. And that was making me smile, because I thought to myself, I can do this again in my second stint. I can be consistent, if not a little bit faster. Now I've got less fuel in the car, and I know I can make it to the end. The Porsche in front is pulling away, 2.7 seconds now, then 2.5. So we're trading time with one another, but the Porsche is gaining a net advantage as I set a purple sector for sector 2 again. And behind us, 6th place is 5 seconds down the road. It would appear as though they're not going to be able to try and make a claim for 5th place. So 5th place is in the bag at this point, and I've just got to manage the car home. And coming around here towards turn 6 once again, there's nothing really else to report at this stage in the race, and it is a bit of a no man's land again. There's not much fighting. Remember, as I said earlier, my aim of this race wasn't to fight for a place, it was just to get the car over the line, and I can use the experience I'm gaining from essentially using a practice run here of races where I'm not going to feel as comfortable in the car. I can take all that experience going forward. As we come through turn number 8, heading down clearways towards turn 9 Clark Curve to wrap up lap number 8. I'm keeping an eye on the guy in front, however, just in case he does start to make any mistakes, and I can pick up a position right at the end. And that's something to always keep in mind as well. Sometimes you can inherit places just by others making mistakes, or alternatively having not foreseen certain circumstances, or just completely made an error. Those circumstances may be that somebody they go to lap decides to brake much earlier than they anticipated, and that costs them a lot of time and caused them to go charging off the track. And I've seen a couple of cars do that in the past in daily races. Now as we come around here, going down the hill once again into turn number 3, Graham Hill into Graham Hill Bend. Still setting blue sectors, and we managed to achieve a 1:33.2 on lap number 8, and I was just enjoying driving the car around the track. It's pure as that. It felt as though everything was gradually coming towards me, the laps were getting better and better, and I wasn't going to complain anymore about the fact I couldn't change for any higher positions. We can see that the gap between myself and 6th place is now almost up to 6 seconds, so I'm getting away from them, I'm pulling away from the rest of the field, and it meant I was the best of the back runners, or the rest of the field I should say. It was as if 1st through to 4th really knew the track very well, and then the rest of us were in a different league. And I've got no complaint with that. I see it a lot in Formula 1 as well. The guys at the front normally, the Red Bulls, the Mercedes and the Ferraris, are a separate pack to everybody else in the field. Hopefully one day that will tighten up, and I'm sure in the future races I'll be tightening up to 1st, 2nd and 3rd. It all comes with experience, time and a bit of practice. So coming through turn number 8 to start finishing off at lap number 9, head down onto clearways once again and then into Clark Curve. Wonderful track, Brands Hatch. If you haven't been to Brands Hatch yet, I strongly recommend it if you're ever in the United Kingdom, i.e. if you're touristing over into the United Kingdom, or alternatively if you do live in the UK, definitely visit the track. GT Sport has modelled it very well based on my experience of seeing the track in person and my father having driven around the track in a BMW M4 as part of a race day session. And it's just a wonderful track to be at. It's a short track, there's wonderful viewing points. I've seen European NASCAR around this track, and I've got to say, it's the home of British racing for me. Silverstone is heralded as one of the homes of British racing, but Brands Hatch will always have it in my heart, and I'd one day love to see a British touring car around this track because it must be phenomenal. But enough reminiscing aside, the gap between myself now and, whoa, what happened here? Well, it looks as though the chap who's running in 3rd, the fellow Brit, C Jenkins 68, has had to pull out the race for some reason. Perhaps they ran out of fuel, perhaps they were trying to do the race on a single tank of fuel and they just didn't judge it right. Not sure what happened there, but we've inherited 4th place. And that's something to always keep in mind, as I said a little bit earlier. Sometimes places will come to you through people making mistakes or unexpected circumstances happen, and that was definitely unexpected from, I think that was the Subaru driver from earlier. So now up into 4th, what I was thinking is, right, well we've got an even better finish on the line here. We're going from 5th to 4th, let's just keep bringing it home. And we'll be 4th just like the previous race. With the idea being here that if we pick up those points we can go into the next races and push for the wins. Looking at the gap between myself and 5th, it's now almost up to 10 seconds, so it looks as though the rest of the field's not going to be getting anywhere near myself anytime soon, so I really don't have to worry about pushing the car anymore. And what you'll see is, as we come across the line for the final lap, I am going to start backing out of it, I'm going to start lifting off, start braking considerably earlier, and just gradually ease the car home. Now one thing I should point out is, in lifting off the car in terms of bringing it home, one trap that I've almost fallen into in previous experiences is that when you start backing off the car and running it a little bit slower, as we drop into the 134.0 there from a 133.4 on lap number 9, is that the change of your race pace as you start to lift off can lead to you making minor mistakes or misanticipating certain runs on the brakes. And that's a mental thing that you have to work on. The fact that you have to work around the concept of you have your pushing hard race pace and then you have your lightened race paces. But I think we manage it quite well here. As we're coming through at turn number 4, Surtees corner for the last time. This is quite an interesting corner, one that you can either take a very tight line to, you can take a wide line to, and I found some people who take very wide lines into Surtees corner have a huge amount of speed going up the hill into Pilgrim's Drop and then down to Hawthorns at turn 5. That's something I need to look at the different lines, and I have been using the top 10 reference laps that you can check out when you're doing your practice times for each FIA race. I've been using those as a guide where I felt that I can't achieve any additional speed by just using the driving lines that Gran Turismo Sport provides to you naturally through the game, and that has helped me considerably. Not as much here, but it helped me a lot in the previous race at the Red Bull Ring. Now coming through turn number 7 and then finally into 8, Sterling's corner once again, just going to take it easy through here in 3rd gear. Going a little bit away from the apex of the corner there because we're not pushing as hard. And then down clearways into Clark Curve for the last time. And we're looking to come across the line. 3rd place goes to the Porsche. The guys in front who started 1st and 2nd have finished this race but changed places. And now onto the main straight, Brabham straight, to bring the BMW M4 in a respectable 4th place. Perhaps not the most exciting of races for you the viewer, but I was definitely happy with the result, especially considering the issues I was having in practice on Friday. The thing that really stood out for me and that I took a lot of joy from was the consistency of my lap times being in the region of 133s and 134s all the way through, and that consistent race pace meant I could finish in 4th place in the end. I've still got a lot to work on, and I'm going to start off with the whole concept of fuel saving, because to come into the pits after 6 laps with only 5% or less remaining, whereas the rest of the people around me had 20 to 40% remaining, was a shocker and something I need to investigate. But based on that experience, we're going to be heading into race 5 at the Tokyo Expressway East Outer Loop this Wednesday with a smile on our face, and in the Group 3 category this time with the BMW M3 once more. Thank you for watching. If you did enjoy this video, be sure to leave a like, comment or subscribe for future episodes. As always, I've been TX141, and until next time, take care.